Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, as Carrie mentioned, I get the opportunity to study generations and to speak to companies and associations about them all over the country. And I absolutely love what I do. So much so that I recently had several conversations and some very real qualitative interviews with people representing each of the four generations that make up majority of our workforce, right? So baby boomers, Gen Xers, Millennials, and Gen Z. And I ask each of them one very simple question. We all are experiencing fear and anxiety in the midst of this pandemic. What are you most fearful or anxious about? And I recall a conversation that I had with my baby boomer mentee. And yes, I did say mentee. For some reason, he insists on calling me his millennial mentor. But anyway, we have a great relationship. And I asked him that question. And in so many words, he said that I'm afraid for myself and I'm afraid for my parents. And I said, tell me more. And he says, well, technically, we are at risk with pre-existing health conditions. And with our age, if we contract the virus, we risk losing our lives. And I said, that is absolutely a valid fear. And then he said, I'm afraid for my job as well. And I said, tell me more. And he said, well, if companies start to lay people off because of an economic downturn, I'm at the top of the salary range. I'm an easy target. And I said, that is an absolute valid fear. And then I got off the phone with him and I called one of my Gen X friends who is just absolutely phenomenal. She's a PhD. She's a professor at an Ivy League college. I mean, she is top of the line. And I said, what are you most fearful or anxious about? And she said, well, I'm afraid for myself, I'm afraid for my parents, and I'm afraid for my children. And I said, tell me more. And she says, well, I'm afraid for myself because our generation was the hardest hit generation by the Great Recession in 2007. We've recovered. We've been one of the only generations to recover fully. And I'm afraid that I just don't have enough to make it through another one of those. And I said, that's valid. And I said, well, tell me about your fear for your parents. And she says, well, I'm caring for aging parents at this point. I'm afraid that if I lose my job, I won't be able to care for them like I want to. And even worse, if they were to contract the virus, I'm afraid for their lives. And I said, that's valid. And I said, well, tell me about the fear for your children. What is that about? And she says, well, I'm afraid that if I have to spend one more day with all of my kids under the same roof, that I'm going to hurt somebody, and it's probably going to be my children. So I'm afraid for their lives for that reason. And I said, that too, my friend, is absolutely valid. And so I get off the phone with her and I call a bunch of my millennial friends and we're on three-way. And I said, what are you most fearful or anxious about right now? And many of them said, well, I'm really not all that afraid. I mean, I actually am looking for a trip to Chile. If that ticket price drops below $35, then I'm out. And I said, that too is valid. I get that 100%. But no, seriously, what are you really afraid about? And many of them said, well, I'm afraid for my future and I'm afraid for my family. I said, tell me more. They said, well, we came out of college dead smack in the middle of the recession. And I'm honestly just now making a dent in my student loans. And so if we go into a recession, I'm afraid that I don't have enough money to make it through that. And I said, that is absolutely valid. And then a few of them on the call said, well, if I'm honest, I'm also afraid for my family. I have a very young family. My kids are 2 and 3 and 4. We're just getting started. I don't have enough built up to carry us for more than a year. And I said, that is absolutely valid. And then I get on the phone with my Gen Z mentees from college. And I said, I've got to ask you guys, what are you most fearful or anxious about? And in so many words, they said, I'm afraid that our leaders aren't handling this well. And I said, tell me more. And I said, well, we have real questions like, are they being proactive enough? Are they making decisions that are people focused and not just economically focused? What are they going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again? Is my company making a difference where it matters? These are the type of questions that I have. And I said, those are absolutely valid. So you're probably at this point asking yourself, why did I share that? This is supposed to be about hope. Why are you talking about fear? because I really wanted to take this moment to validate your fears. And you're probably like, well, aren't we supposed to not be fearful? I'm a man of faith. I'm a woman of hope. I'm a woman of faith. Isn't it wrong for me to have fear? And I would say to that, unequivocally, absolutely not. We all have fears. Fear is very, very real. You are human. Of course you have fear. So I just want to set some of you free right now from that very thing and share with you that hope is not the absence of fear. Hope is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of trust. Just because I have fear doesn't mean I don't trust. Trust that things will get better. Trust that my maker is more than a master. Trust that everything I have is everything I need. Trust that if it happened to me, it must have been for me. Trust that my better days are yet ahead. Hope is not the absence of fear. It is the presence of trust. So you're probably saying, okay, Raven, well, how is that fact going to help me unite the generations in my life? And I would say, first, you have to start with empathy. You now understand the fears that each of the generations in your life might just be experiencing and why. So now you can say, I hear you. I understand your fear, and you validate that for them. But after you validate their fear, then the next step is you have to spark hope, and you have to do it now. Baby boomers, hear me. You spark hope through sharing your wisdom. You've survived bigger storms. You've slain bigger giants than this. We need that perspective. Share those stories with us. Gen X, you spark hope through building bridges. You create intentional points of connection between the young and the old of your work groups and your families. You have to be the bridge. We need you right now. Millennials, you spark hope through leadership. It's time for us to step up. We have to take all of the pressure off of Gen X, and we have to be present and consistent for our baby boomer parents and the rest of our families. And we need to lead Gen Z right now by example. You have to lead. And then lastly, Gen Z, you spark hope through using your tech savviness to bring us together right now. Teach us Zoom, teach us House Party, teach us WhatsApp, TikTok. The technology is the only way we can convene together right now. Use your savvy to spark. So now that I've validated your fears and I've given you a few things to think about in ways that you could spark hope right now as a generation, my last question to you is this. What are you going to do to spark hope right now? Thank you for your time.